Good morning. It is good to sit here and imagine looking at you all. Peace be with you. In my short life, I have had the experience of many world-shaping events. I was 1 year old when the birth control pill was introduced. That event shaped the role of women in our world in a way that was simply not imagined by the population of 1959. Now, I don't want to be heard to suggest that women somehow have achieved equality with men in terms of careers or parity of pay, because we still have a lot of work to do in that area. But the introduction of the pill did offer women agency over their body in a way that has reshaped the way women experience the world, and our world is different because of it. In 1989, I watched in awe as the Berlin Wall began to be dismantled. That wall physically divided the city of Berlin east from west, but it also divided the world ideologically east from west. The fall of that wall began to reshape the way governments understood their alignments. It began to reshape the way we thought of enemies. Populations had to reimagine how they were going to govern themselves. The end of that branch of communism has altered the ways in which our world is organized. The destruction of the World Trade Center buildings in 2001 shook North American culture and calcified a new enemy. The fears that our way of life and our economy could be so easily threatened by a strong ideology reframed our enemies as those who don't believe in our Western way of life. This event changed regulations around security and travel. It also changed our economic system. But perhaps most significantly, it changed how we view people from the Middle East. In 1992, Bill Clinton was elected president of the United States, and at that time there were about 50 websites. 50. Can you guess where I got that information? That's right, the internet. Today there are literally hundreds of millions of websites, and the internet has changed the way we understand the world. During a global pandemic, we can still have school because students can learn on the internet. During a global pandemic, in which shuts down the world and doesn't allow us to gather, we can still do church. Here we are. During a global pandemic, we can still order groceries online and have them delivered to our door. We can still entertain ourselves. The internet has changed the way we understand the world. All of these events have shifted the way we understand the world. And now in 2020, we have a new global pivot point. The global pandemic that we are experiencing might be the biggest world shaper that we've experienced in a very long time. The coronavirus has halted the frenetic pace of our world in a way that very little has had the capacity to do before. The unseen enemy, which threatens the lives of untold thousands and millions of people, has altered our world so quickly that it's almost unbelievable. Could you have imagined a global shutdown of this sort last Christmas? Christmas, of course, is a world-shaping event. The Christmas story celebrates God taking on human form. The other big world-shaping event is Easter, where we celebrate the power of the new life rising from the tomb. And so we come this morning to another post-resurrection story, which I find helpful as I contemplate the world changing around me. It's the one we read earlier in the Gospel of John, in which we find Jesus entering into a room full of his disciples, who are there, we are told, because they are afraid of the religious authorities. Fear can provide a mask for a lot of other emotions. I wonder if they were also ashamed. Ashamed of the fact that they had abandoned Jesus earlier in his time of need. I wonder if they were afraid to admit that they had followed another Messiah wannabe. I wonder if they were angry with Jesus because they had witnessed his power over death just days earlier when he raised Lazarus from the grave. I wonder if they felt betrayed by Jesus because they knew he had this amazing power, and yet he refused to use it in a political realm. When you consider the complicated relationship between Jesus and his disciples, you begin to realize that there was more than enough disappointment to be shared by everyone. And so, into this emotional turmoil, the risen one greets them with the words, "Peace be with you." And not just once, but twice. And then again, when his friend Thomas joins them. Jesus' greeting is a beautiful beginning to building and repairing relationships that transcends fear and betrayal and anger. Peace be with you. These are not often the words uttered when meeting a person who has betrayed you or wronged you. A more natural response, I think, would be punishment in the form of aggression. At least that's a more natural response for me. But being a Mennonite practiced in pacifism, my aggression usually takes a fairly passive form. But that passive form is no less damaging to relationships. Many of us might say that Jesus had the right to punish his friends for their bad behavior. Many of us who have felt betrayed like to own that right to inflict hurt on those who have wronged us. Even if we don't act on that impulse, it makes us feel good to know that we have that right. But Jesus refused to own that right. He recognized that the world was changing for his disciples. The world for us is changing because of COVID-19. The coronavirus, which has had the capacity to change and halt the frenetic pace of our life, has also quickly seeped into our psyche. That sickness that has touched millions of lives and has caused fear and anger and anxiety in billions more continues to shape us. In this state, we can so quickly assign responsibility for the failure to keep us safe. We blame governments. We blame medical institutions. We blame foreigners. We blame the rich for their capacity to travel. We blame the poor because they can't wash their hands as frequently as recommended, or because they need to work and can't stay at home. Again, there is plenty of disappointment to go around. I'm reading this story with new emphasis this year. As I anticipate significant changes in our economy, our health system, our educational systems, our governments, and our churches, I read this story as a template for an adequate Christian response to massive shifts. Jesus' prayer still works God's grace into difficult and changing times. Peace be with you. I'm hearing peace be with you as a guide to building relationships that have been damaged. This peace bypassed responsibility and blame for having caused problems. This peace metabolizes pain and allows for the energy that comes from pain to actually build muscle and sinew in the tissue of community. This peace ushers in forgiveness. And forgiveness, I think, is going to be one of the important ingredients in rebuilding relationships and our society when the worst of this pandemic is past. Peace be with you. Amen.